San Diego has had a beautiful sunny day, but when it's not. On average, there are 263 days of sunshine a year, and the average temperature is 82.3 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a Mediterranean type of climate. I just picked up a classic Corvette from the transportation company. My name is Randy Oxford. I just picked up a red 1954 Corvette convertible for the love of my life as a Valentine's Day gift. She has worked very hard over the past year. I had been eyeing the car for weeks, waiting for it to be auctioned online at the Barrett-Jackson Classic Auto Auction. I pulled the trigger and won $92,000. She had always wanted a car like this, and I wanted to make sure she got it. By the way, my wife's name is Candy, and she's a contract lawyer. She works in the legal department of Terrafon Corporation. And I myself work for a hedge fund called Bartholomew as a senior analyst. I met Candy in my senior year at the University of Southern California. Like many others, we met at one of the many parties at one of the fraternity houses, dated, partied, and got married a year after graduation. Have you ever heard of the penny jar? There is an old tale that says that if a couple puts a penny in the jar for every time they have any sexual relations during the first year, for the rest of their married life, if they take out 1 penny every time they have sex, they will have a penny left over by the end of their lives. Keep in mind that in those days, people on average did not live to be 70 years old. Until recently, you could count on somewhere around 40. To preserve our marriage and sex life, I came up with a new version of the penny jar. I called it the Valentine's Day jar. Instead of putting pennies in the jar only the first year we had sex, I put money in a Valentine's jar on her dresser every time we had sex. When the next Valentine's Day came around, every year I would take the money and buy her a gift with the amount I put in the jar. I believe that if you are not having sex with the woman you live with, then you are just roommates. Remember, Valentine's Day is for lovers, not roommates with a contract. You have Mother's Day for a woman, if she's a mom, and an anniversary for a wife. Just because you are married doesn't mean you are lovers. We had different donation requirements for each of the different activities we did. She made me pay an additional amount for each time she made me finish. I told her I couldn't afford her if I had to shell out money for each time she got ecstasy. She agreed. After all, she didn't want to give up one climax she might miss for the sake of a few dollars. Heck, Bill Gates couldn't afford her if he had to pay for it. Of course, I was the one who had to pay for it. Even if she instigated the sex, I had to pay for it. Believe me when I say it was money well spent. There was a lot of I in the bank for the first couple years. When we first started, it was only a couple $1,000s at the end of the year. But last year, I bought her a $50,000 diamond necklace. This year, it was over $90,000 in the bank. My wife was a typical 6-foot blonde from Southern California weighing about 130 pounds. Yes, she's a natural blonde. I thought she was 10, but when she looked at herself in the mirror naked, she hated her body. She had very flat breasts. I never complained about it. It was just the way she was, and I accepted it. I watched porn and other women but never made comments or stared at them in front of my wife. And I certainly never teased her about the size of her breasts. After all, how would I feel if she judged me on the size of my dignity? We were together and married for a total of 9 years and discussed plans to start a family. But before she got pregnant, she wanted a breast augmentation. California has some of the best plastic surgeons on the planet. After 3 consultations and a thorough vetting process, we settled on one. Have you ever heard of the expression go big or go home? Candy decided to do a double-double. My sister has had huge breasts seemingly all her life. She had a C cup at age 12 and a D cup at age 14. When she graduated high school, she had a huge size EE. She hated them. The last few years, my sister has had back problems and wanted to go down a size. Her husband makes good money, but with 3 kids and taxes here in California, they couldn't pull that kind of expense. Candy just wouldn't listen to her when she said she hated them and didn't want to have the surgery. No matter what the cautions were, Candy still wanted to go ahead with the surgery. Since Candy and I were doing okay with our incomes, I decided to give my sister the gift of breast reduction surgery from the same plastic surgeon who was going to do Candy's surgery. My sister was happy with a small C size. I talked to her husband after the surgery, and he too is pleased with the reduction. He jokes that he turned into a drunken boxer who had been beaten over the head with her breasts for years as she rocked back and forth. Whoops. I pulled into the garage with her new Corvette and parked it next to my 1972 454 metallic blue 4-speed Chevelle Malibu. My wife often chided me for loving that car more than her. I used to tease her by telling her that it sure as hell wasn't costing me that much to drive this car. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I walked into our humble abode and saw my wife sitting in the living room waiting for her Valentine's Day gift that she had earned over the past year. She was blindly sitting on the couch with our neighbors Pete and Emily Tillman. They happened to be our best friends. Pete was a tall guy at 6'3" tall. He wasn't as athletic as I was, but he was still in pretty good shape and worked as a regional sales manager for a computer company. He managed people on the West Coast. He had a pretty good gift of gab and bragged about his college adventures. He was always the ringleader at the party. Emily was a gorgeous redhead about 5'6" tall, weighing about 115 pounds with size 36C breasts and a very firm ass. I got all of this information from what I could gather about her body when she wore one of the many one-piece swimsuits she wore to our pool parties. She was a little more conservative than Candy. In college, she had been a pretty good athlete. In college, she became the first All-American soccer player. She worked as an accountant and coached girls' soccer. I called Pete and Emily to let them know I would be home in 5 minutes. I asked them to blindfold Candy so that when I got home, she would only hear the noise of the car and couldn't sneak to the window to see what gift she had gotten. It was my one and only lover's dream car, and she would be very surprised to get it. Candy was sitting in front of me, and Pete was to her right on the family couch. Emily moved to my right, sitting behind me in the chair. "Pete, take the blindfold off Candy's eyes," I ordered. As Pete removed the blindfold from Candy's eyes, she started bouncing on the couch and giggling, barely able to keep from seeing her present. I reached behind my back and handed Candy an envelope that appeared to contain a card. Except instead of a full envelope and a card, it was reduced by about 25% of its original size. "Happy Valentine's Day, dear," I smiled. Candy stopped jumping and smiled. "What is it, honey? Where's the rest of it?" Candy asked with a puzzled look on her face. "Where's the rest?" She interjected with disappointment in her voice. I replied, "That's it. That's all you earned last year for your Valentine's Day gift. The card and envelope cost $12 retail, but all you made was $3, or a quarter of what it cost. And that's what you got." Candy sat back in shock and stammered, "What do you mean, honey? I saw this jar a couple weeks ago and it was full to the brim, and most of them were 100 grams. "Okay. When was the last time we had sex, Candy?" Randy asked. Candy hesitated and opened and closed her mouth several times, trying to remember. "Candy, you look like a fish out of water," laughed Randy. Pulling himself together, he said, "I can tell you it was the week after Valentine's Day last year. I came home and you jumped me. But even though we were doing it, it was like I wasn't there for you. Not to mention you called out your lover's name and it wasn't God. And as far as I'm concerned, if God wanted you, he could have had you." After that Tuesday, we never did it again. I had a private investigator follow you, and I was presented with the evidence he gathered on you and your lover. You couldn't even stand it. I was devastated. You broke my heart and my soul. I went on a bender. I started drinking and had a mental breakdown. You and your lover were in such a relationship fog that you didn't even notice it. I fell into deep despair the longer it went on. I tried to get you back, but you didn't even notice it. By the end of April, you didn't even notice that the money wasn't even being put in the jar anymore. When you went on your so-called trips to pull your deals all the way to San Francisco. I went to Vegas to try to ease my pain, so not only did I become an alcoholic, but I became addicted to gambling. I'm here to confess to you that we're broke and ask for your forgiveness. I have drained all of our savings and investments to the tune of about $3 million. I spent all $750,000 of my 401k, which we now owe taxes on, which I haven't paid. I refinanced the house for a second mortgage and we no longer have any equity. I'm sorry. My Chevelle is the only thing I own outright. I even refinanced your Mercedes to feed my gambling habit. I also hate to tell you this, but I lost your necklace that I gave you last year. I'm so sorry I got the tip. It was the right decision. I had inside information about the race, but as soon as the gates opened, the jockey fell off his horse. Candy sat in shock as she listened to Randy's story. That's when I hit rock bottom and the love of my life, my new sweetheart, came into my life. She got me clean from alcohol, she got me into counseling, she even went with me and held my hand. I am now a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You didn't even notice that I didn't drink during the holidays, did you? I spent many hours with her, sitting in front of a psychiatrist, explaining to her my grief, my insecurities, and even your rejection of me as a man. But something good came out of this fiasco that you and your lover pulled off. I realized that you and I have very little in common. My lover and I love the outdoors. We love sports. We have a lot more in common than you and I do. Last August, when you went to a lawyers' convention in the Bahamas with your lover, she and I spent 2 weeks camping, traveling, fishing, and rafting on the Colorado River. We made love under the stairs to the howling of coyotes. In October, you attended that conference in New York with your lover and we went to Cancun. We went parasailing, fishing, and scuba diving. We had the time of our lives. She likes to golf and bowling. She likes opera and dancing. She's perfect for me. She's beautiful not only on the outside, but also on the inside. I got to the point where I was looking forward to going away with your lover for your little weekend getaway. Candy covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you, baby. I promise it was just sex. He wasn't better than you, just different. We'll make it work. Candy, Randy snorted. That silicone in your breasts must have gotten into your brain. Randy let her go on for about 5 minutes. Wait, Candy. I have something else for you for Valentine's Day. Randy walked to the front door and opened it. A tall, handsome gentleman walked in and addressed Candy. Are you Mrs. Randy Oxford? Yes, Candy replied. She yelled, no, 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 no. He handed her a large envelope, took a picture of her with it, then said, You have been served. Sitting next to her was Pete. He was sweating now and looked nervous. The gentleman approached Pete. Mr. Peter Tillman. Pete lowered his eyes and answered yes, lowering his head and holding out his hand for the envelope. The gentleman took his picture and said, You have been served. Pete looked at Emily, expecting hell to rain down on him, but instead she just smiled at him. Now he was getting really scared. Randy looked at Candy and spoke in a nice, calm voice. We have until the end of February to move out of our house. You see this man standing behind me hanging a notice on the front door? He's from the sheriff's department. The bank is foreclosing on us. I haven't paid in the last 6 months. We don't have any money. I lost my job over 6 months ago because of my problems and the mental cruelty you two caused, and I hid it from you. I was so ashamed of it. I will move in with my mistress in her house, and she will let me stay with her as long as I want. Candy burst into tears. She looked at him perplexed and asked, If I only got this card, then who is the car in the garage for? My dear, it's for my mistress, Randy replied. She found out about our Valentine card and wanted me to buy her one. I told her why would I buy a new one? You and I weren't using our jar anymore, and I would just use it. I explained to her how it worked, and she wanted to make sure she surpassed your best year. She was great. She informed me that she would never want another man but me as long as she lived. She told me her goal was to make sure I never fantasized about being with you again. She wanted to fill that jar to the brim to see what I had in store for her as a gift. Like you, she wanted a red 1954 Corvette, and that's exactly what I got her. It was put in her name last week before the divorce papers were filed, so it counts as a gift for her. Besides, I've decided that the amount you spent on Pete makes us even. In the divorce, I'm asking for 35% of your income as alimony and to keep me on your insurance for 3 years until I can get back on my feet. I would be happy to split everything 50-50ths, but the only thing we own is in this house. I will only ask to keep my personal belongings. I will leave the rest to you. Since I don't have a job and I can't work because of the mental illness you've caused, the IRS will be demanding payments from you. Now about you, Pete, Randy growled. I'm suing you for alienation of affection. I may not win, but I'll tie you up in court. Even if I win, there's probably nothing left after your divorce. I'm sure Emily will take you to the cleaners before I get to you." At that moment, the doorbell rang. The same person came in, checked Pete and Candy's names, and they were served again. Randy sat down and Emily stood up. "Pete, my dear, Randy informed me of your and Candy's affair almost a year ago. I too have been suffering and have found a new lover. And when it's over, I'm going to accept his offer of marriage as soon as we get divorced." "I too lost my job and started drinking. I've drained all our investments. I took out a second mortgage on our house and spent it all. Do you both remember me paying your taxes last year? Now you both need to be careful what you sign. You both signed papers for a second mortgage on both of our houses. I've maxed out our credit cards. I'm going to ask for alimony so I don't have to give up insurance on your house and our house. My lover will be moving in with us tonight, and you will be supporting both of us. Since I'm a mental health survivor too, I'm afraid of you. I've placed a 500-foot restraining order on you. That means you can't live here with Candy since you will be closer than 500 feet from our home. Have your attorney call me and set up a time when the sheriff can escort you to the property to pick up your things. While we were sitting here, I changed the door locks and my new lover will be moving in tonight. Candy, I will also be linking you to the foreclosure attachment court. I will now turn the floor over to Randy." "Now, both of you open the envelopes," Randy ordered. Both opened them and pulled out glossy 8x10 photographs. Candy shrieked and tore them open. Pete sat back and admired himself. "Candy, unless you both agree to a divorce on our terms, you're going to become an adult website sensation. I'm sure your mother and father, whom I love dearly, would love to see it, as would your co-workers at work. I'm sure your company would love to see them and put them on your web page. You, a 6-foot-tall natural blonde with those monstrosities, will be a star. Emily and I leave you 2 lovebirds. By the way, here are your car keys. My favorite." He kissed Emily passionately. Pete screamed, "You bastards! We're going to sue you for cheating too." "Pete, my friend, you have proof. Come, my beloved Emily, I'll put the car in your garage that your husband so graciously provides for us, and you can take me for a ride to our favorite spot by the lake and christen the front seat." That evening, Emily showed me around the house. "Honey, here's the bedroom I've set up for you. We agreed not to have sex until we were divorced. And really, Randy, 4 threesomes, and I like women." Randy laughed. "A man can fantasize, can't he?" Emily reached into her pocket. "Here are the keys to your Corvette, Randy." "Emily, you helped me through this. You can keep it," Randy replied. "No, I can't," Emily said in a stern voice, refusing to take them back. Randy smiled devilishly. "I'll keep them for now. I plan to let you earn them over the next year." The following year on Valentine's Day, Randy sat at the poker table at the Bellagio contemplating whether to bet or fold without looking at his cards. That evening he had gotten very lucky. He was surprised by the nice soft hand stroking his neck. She leaned over and kissed his cheek, making goosebumps run down his skin. "Hey, handsome, don't you want to have a good time this evening?" a sexy voice asked. Randy turned and saw the love of his life, Emily, standing behind him. "Always, my dear," Randy replied. He turned and saw that she was wearing a bright blue strapless chiffon dress with a plunging bust line. Her long cleavage was accented by a diamond necklace that had belonged to his ex-wife. The diamond necklace drew men's eyes to her deep cleavage. The diamonds accentuated the blue color of her dress and her long orange hair. Randy, being an Alabama fan, usually didn't like the colors orange and blue combined together, but she was able to pull it off. "Are you ready?" Emily asked. "Yes, $150,000, shrugged Randy. "What's the matter?" asked Emily, looking into Randy's sad eyes. "Sir," the dealer called out, "that'll be $10,000. Randy tossed the chips on the table without looking at his cards. Then he cursed himself as to why the hell he'd made the bet when he finally saw what he had in his hand. "You know, Emily, I feel really guilty for taking all of Candy and I's money and moving it offshore. On top of that, I set her up for that bogus mental cruelty charge in the divorce decree. Yes, it hurt, but not enough to become a drunk or addicted to gambling." And I failed to mention that I pawned her $1,000 necklace to gamble with, but kept the ticket to get the necklace back after the divorce. And then I slipped her a bill from the IRS, and that was a shitty thing to do on my part. Plus, I ended up winning in the end. He put his arm around Emily's waist, pulling her close to him. I feel like crap every month when I get my child support check, Randy explained. Emily smiled. That's why I love you. You have a conscience. If it didn't bother you, you wouldn't be the man I know you are. As for Pete and I having money, I don't feel guilty at all. They allow me to spend as much time in bed with you as I can without going back to work. Hell, I worked my ass off to put him through college, and I want my investment back. And here's the other thing. I got the best part of the deal. I got Candy's car, her necklace, and her husband. I won. I want you to know that I'll support you no matter what decision you make. She kissed Randy on the cheek. Emily looked at David with a glower. Honey, you need to make a decision right now. I'm going to get pregnant tonight, and if you want to be a daddy, you better get back to our room right now. If not, you can get in line. With those words, she turned and walked away. I crawl, I crawl, I crawl, I crawl, I crawl, I crawl, and I crawl. Randy looked around the table and saw that all the men had stood up, waiting to see what Randy would do. Oh, shit, he snapped back. I won the hand. Everyone folded. Cash me out and put it in my account. Here, take this for a tip. Randy tossed the dealer 5 $1,000 chips. He gulped down the Bacardi and Coke he had brought and ran to catch up with Emily. He caught up with her in the lobby, grabbed her hand, and led her to the elevators. They reached the elevator and waited for the doors to open. Once inside, he pressed the 33rd floor button, and the doors closed. Randy walked over to his beautiful wife, put his arms around her waist, pulled her to him, and kissed her passionately. He pulled away. Honey, that was a great bluff you just made downstairs. I had shit on my hands, and when you told me you were pregnant, they all fell over. Zing, the door opened, and Randy let his wife out. She walked out the door in front of Randy and turned to him with a frankly poker face. Who said I was bluffing? She turned and walked down the hall. Randy stood there smiling. She turned again and asked with raised eyebrows, Are you coming? As the elevator doors began to close. Randy barely had time to slip his hand between the two sides before the doors closed and immediately bounced back. He ran after her and grabbed her hand again. Once in the room, Emily kissed Randy, asking, So where is it? Where's what? Randy replied, smiling. You know what? Emily smiled. About me going to get you pregnant, laughed Randy. You were going to do it anyway, Emily giggled. Randy reached into his pocket and handed her a small keychain with the key to the Corvette. Emily, Randy smiled, you know I'd give you the car for what you helped me through last year. It was already titled in your name. I know, honey, Emily giggled, but the fun part is earning it with the man I love. Happy Valentine's Day. Rhonda and Jeff eventually divorced. She couldn't keep her legs closed. No, I never touched her. She forced him into swinging, but even that wasn't enough for her. She was constantly sleeping with anything that moved. She married 3 or 4 times and died alone a few years ago. As for Jeff, he remarried a few years after his divorce to a nice girl, and they are still married. I know you all will want to know what happened to the blonde girl. Today, 45 years later, she sleeps upstairs late.